You know, we have the new Gen Y Executive hitch on the front of the fifth wheel, and the safety chain system is actually pretty ingenious. So basically you take one hook off, and they designed these so the chain links just pass right through. So you don't have to actually cut your chain into separate segments. So all I have to do is feed the other side through here, and then it will hook into these little grooves right here, and I'll have my chain in. It will be one long uncut piece of chain that's reinforced by this area right here whenever it needs to be used. That is pretty dang cool. Anyways, we are on video 2 of this Gen Y hitch, and we're going to take this thing for a towing evaluation. So we have everything in place. I actually attached my breakaway to one of the unused mounting holes with a grade 8 bolt through a grade 8 washer, a larger flat zinc washer, zinc on the other side, grade 8, and a grade 8 nut. So this still can move, and it gives me the ability to have my trailer brakes connected without having to drill into the actual hitch itself. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, let's kick this video off the right way. So I thought the rain was going to die up, but it looks like it's just starting to rain on me again. That said, a lot of people are going to ask me what I think of the new Moride Goosneck hitch, or the CURT Helix Gooseneck connection, and some of the others. And to be honest with you, until I actually tow with them, I don't really have any honest opinion on them. I can only tell you that all the technology seems similar, it seems sound, and it is really just a tried and true technique. They're just applying it towards a goose connection versus a traditional kingpin. So this right here is a actual product that's been out on the market for a while now, and they've made several kind of evolutionary changes to it, including the really cool snap latch coupler, which is an auto latching coupler. And this is a really great invention because it gives you the ability to auto latch to your vehicle whenever you're hitching up, and then whenever you need to unhitch, you pull it up and it resets itself so it's ready to auto latch again. But yeah, until I tow with the other products, it's hard to give you like an honest evaluation. They all look, again, like they're very well engineered, and they are very competitive against each other. But again, I like the Gen Y mainly because there are so many fewer things that you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about an airbag. You don't have to worry about a lot of the things that typically have to be thought of whenever you're dealing with this type of a product. Okay, so we have everything tidied up now. We no longer have the air hose coming from the Viair air compressor in there. Actually, I removed that huge 460 amp hour battery, and I replaced it with a 200 amp hour battery that weighs less than half the amount, because I am still trying to reduce weight up front in this fifth wheel. I don't feel as if I am at a really happy weight level that this should be at, considering we're at about 17,500 pounds and we have over 36, or roughly 3,600 pounds worth of pin weight that rests on the back of the truck. So I'd like to get that down closer to about 3,000 pounds. I've taken a lot of stuff out of the basement storage area, and I just removed the battery, which definitely probably shaved about 60 pounds, maybe even a little bit more than that. And you know, a lot of folks are going to say, well, you added a lot of weight with this. This actually weighs about the same amount as the Goosebox, probably a little bit less actually, according to the paperwork. The Goosebox is about 160 pounds. This is about 120 pounds. So yeah, they're definitely a little bit different in terms of overall weight. But the cool thing about this is this weight really only matters whenever you are, well, it matters to the truck because it's absolutely going to count towards the pin weight pressing down. But from a weight overhanging the fifth wheel, it really applies when it's static, just sitting here not connected, because it's pulling down like this. But once you actually hitch up, the pressure changes, right? All of a sudden you have the downward pressure of the fifth wheel pressing against this, and this piece right here is no longer weighing down against the front of the fifth wheel. That all makes sense. That said, like I said, everything's all cleaned up. We got all the wires tucked out of the way. That plug right there went to the little solar panel that was on there. The exposed side is the ground connection, so I'm not too worried about that. I might tape it off, but it's not really that big of a deal. We got the chains in place. I am actually working on a solution, and if you have one, share it with me, please. But when you switch to this, you still have to get in the bed of your truck to connect your chains, and that is a pain because it's still a reason that you have to get back there. I know some folks say that they cut smaller sections of chains and they keep them permanently attached right there, and then they simply connect this to the ends of those chains from like right here, so they don't have to get in the bed of the truck. And that's actually a really, really smart solution. I might try that, but for the initial hookup, we're not going to do that. What I just want to see is how this piece right here compresses whenever we get the weight off of the front and onto the back of the truck. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the auto leveling system to retract the back. Actually, I just put it on hitch height, so the back leveling legs are going to retract and the front ones are going to extend once the back ones retract, because you don't want those down when the front ones extend out. And then we're simply going to raise this high enough to get over the B&W ball right here, so we can move the truck back, place this on top, and see how it works. But I am super, super excited. Okay, so you can see that we are pretty much right above the ball. Let me move to the side here. And that cup right there allows you about 2 inches all the way around. I think it's 2 inches, might be 3, but it allows you a little bit of wiggle room if you're slightly off. What's going to be important here, though, is to some people, being really close to the tailgate isn't going to be something they want to do, mainly because if your tailgate were to go down and you're turning, you could hit this, and that's something we want to avoid. I got some of my motion detection rodent repellers going off right now because it is getting a little dark. But let's go ahead and lower this down and see what it looks like. Okay, so the first problem that I see is that even though this is at its lowest level, we can't drop that down anymore, the side overhang clearance right here is going to be a little tight, at least in the configuration that I'm at right here, because you can see the truck is nose down, which means the back is going to be up like that slightly, actually a little more than slightly. The front of it, you can see we're at about 6 inches, but the back of it, we're closer to 4 inches. And once we actually pull it forward, and I don't have everything disconnected at this point, but once we pull it forward, you should be able to see a pretty significant difference right there, and that should rise back up, because I can already tell it's going to, because we're starting to get the downward pressure on the truck, and we have plenty of clearance right here. We just don't have a heck of a lot right here. Cool thing is I have another ball I can put in there that'll raise it up a little bit more if I feel that that's an issue, so I don't have to go hunting for a solution. I already kind of have one. So let's go ahead and keep putting it down and see what the torsion arms right there look like. Okay, so there you go, and it is starting to get dark on us, so we're going to wrap this, at least this filming today, up. We'll be back out here tomorrow so we can hitch up and we can actually take it for a tow. I'm really interested in seeing what this clearance is right here. I don't want it to be like this high. I don't want it to be like 8 inches, but I would like it to be closer to about 6 inches front to back. But then again, we are on a slope here, so this slopes down about 6 inches. It's a 6-inch slab and it slopes directly to level ground down there. So again, the front of the truck is sitting a lot lower than the back of the truck. And that's the reason why that gap is so narrow. But again, you also have to think about how you change the geometry of things. Now that the pivot point is down there and it's not way up high like you would have with a fifth wheel hitch, things become a little bit different and your angles become a little bit more severe whenever you're making a hard angle, because you're pivoting from a much lower point versus the top of a fifth wheel plate that might be like 12 to 15 inches higher than what this is setting at. Anyways, yep, getting a little dark, but we are definitely going to take this thing out very soon. At least for me, it'll be tomorrow. For you, it'll be right now. Okay, so I have my camera mounted there on the side, actually on a spare Gen Y adapter plate that I have, and it's going to allow it to magnetically attach to that. It's going to point up at the torsion flex section. It's actually the following day, and actually a really nice but windy day. So what I've done here, which is kind of interesting, is I took sections of the Goosebox chain, since I'm not using it anymore. I put another hook on each end, and it gives me the ability to actually connect my chains from here without having to get into the bed of the truck. It's not going to help me much for the trailer breakaway, and I still need to get that connected, so I'll probably have to hop in there anyways. Yeah, this would be a really cool area for an innovative solution. That said, we are going to get that side connected, get the trailer breakaway connected, and get the 7-way connected so we can hit the road and see what this thing is all about. Okay, so we have everything connected now. We have our breakaway, 7-way, and all of our chains. We're gonna go ahead and take off. And then whenever I pull flat, I'm gonna see how this clearance looks, because right now it's kind of close, and I wanna see what happens when we level out. I think it's gonna straighten out pretty nicely. It's gonna be interesting to see what that torsion flex looks like on the Gen Y. Okay, yeah, I can already tell from here that I like the way that the combination looks in terms of the over side rail clearance that we have on the trailer, but let me show you all. Okay, so this is what the setup looks like. Looks pretty dang good. The truck and the trailer at least match now. And the overhang clearance looks really good. It looks like I probably have about 6 inches worth of clearance there. All right, let's get this thing on the road and see what it looks like. It's gonna be really interesting again to see what that hitch looks like, especially on this uneven ground right here. Okay, so I'm not going to do a lot of talking on this. I'm actually just going to kind of share the video, and I'll voice over any areas that look like, you know, there may be a significance, but I'm going to let you guys kind of enjoy the sights and the sounds of this Gen Y executive hitch on the front of the Brookstone. I'll let you see how it works. Now let's talk a little bit about towing dynamics, because that's what this is all about. How did the Gen Y Executive feel compared to my previous hitch, the Reese Goosebox? I'm gonna say they feel very different. They do not feel the same. At first I thought that they were gonna feel like super similar, but they don't. The Goosebox definitely has more of a bounce to it. You can definitely feel the front of the fifth wheel, or at least it feels like the back of your truck, I guess, has more spring to it. And that's primarily because of the airbag, but also because of the way the Goosebox hinges. Now it has the hinge up front, up here, and it slants back, so it's kind of rocking forward and down a little bit whenever you hit bumps, especially because of that airbag and the airbag's easier capability of compressing versus the torsion bars here. Now I understand when you get this, there is what they claim 1,000-mile break-in period, but I don't think that that is absolutely necessary for this thing to work. I could absolutely see, using the bedside camera I have, that this was functioning. The difference though is that this one didn't give me that virtual perception of chucking like you sometimes get with the Goosebox. A lot of folks, including myself, have made that claim over the years that the Goosebox kind of has that forward feeling because of how the actual system works and the fact that the coupler is kind of going back like this instead of straight up and down. And that does provide a little bit more shock dampening forward and aft. This one, because of the weight, you don't really get that same type of shock dampening. It's a little bit different, but you can see we have about 3,500 pounds worth of pin weight on the back of the truck. So for this hitch to have any forward and backward damping, it would have to essentially go forward and lift up and then rock backward. And I really didn't see that happening. What I primarily saw was that this will spring up and down, and it will give you a bit of that forward and aft damping, but it's not going to be like a tremendous amount. However, this is what it comes down to. Which one feels better overall? I would have to say the Gen Y Executive edges out the Reese Goosebox overall. And we don't have anywhere near 1,000 miles on this thing so far. So I can definitely say that what they're trying to do is accomplished. It definitely feels really good, especially when we went over some of the real rough roads that caused the back to really bounce up and down a lot like this. I'm gonna be interested in seeing what the video captured, because it did a fantastic job taming a lot of that, at least the feeling inside of the truck. Now, what was going on inside of the RV, I don't know. I didn't have a camera going on inside of the RV at the time of filming, but it's going to be interesting to see what the camera picks up, because what I feel, especially within that first 1,000 miles that you're going to see, is that you're going to see it not move a heck of a lot over smaller bumps, but then when you hit something big like an expansion joint or like a big dip or a big bump, you'll see that thing suddenly move, and that movement right there is really going to absorb a lot of the shock that potentially could transfer to the RV and to the truck. So it felt great. It actually felt very functional. It felt like it was doing what it was supposed to do, and I love the fact that I didn't have to hop in the bed of my truck to air up an airbag anymore. That, to me, was a big pain in the butt. Not having to get in the bed of my truck is something that you don't have to deal with when you have a fifth wheel hitch, when you're dealing with a traditional kingpin and a fifth wheel hitch. And sometimes I've actually felt like, hey, it might be easier just to go back to that so I don't have to deal with that. Not that it's a total pain, but it's just a step that, again, when you're towing, you don't want to have to deal with. That said, you know, with the extended chains there, the fact that I don't have to get in the bed to do that, the only thing I have to kind of climb up over the side to do is to connect my disconnect, which I still have to do even with a fifth wheel hitch. So not really any more steps now, especially with those little chain extensions, but I'm very pleased so far. That is awesome. We will be taking this on a trip here in the next 2.5 weeks. And once we do, I will probably film it again. I will probably give you an update on how it felt on a much longer trip, because it'll be about 4.5 hours each way. That said, though, I'm pretty impressed so far for an initial trip. I'd love to get your feedback, especially from those who tow with a Goosebox and have made the change to the Executive, or maybe you had the Goosebox on a previous RV and you've switched to the Executive on your new RV, or maybe your new RV came with the Executive as an option. I'd love to hear what your experience has been. Drop a comment below. I'm not going to filter any of the comments. I want to hear critical feedback. I want to hear positive feedback. Overall, I just want to hear honest feedback. So yeah, please drop a comment below. I hope you all have felt that I've represented myself honestly in terms of how I interpret this. I don't want people to think that I'm just simply trying to make a product sound better because it's a product that I'm evaluating at that moment. I love to be honest about my opinions on things and share those with you. But please drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.